All right, guys, so let's finish off this foldable in this video. So we're going to do, starting kind of in the bottom half of the back page where it says evaluating sine, cosine, tangent in your calculators. And this looks a little different. Okay, so it says sine of x equals a big long number, okay? So if we know the value of sine, cosine, or tangent, which is what we're doing here, we can use the inverse function, okay, so inverse sine, inverse cosine, inverse tangent, to find the angle measure. Okay, so once again, if we know the value of sine, cosine, or tangent, we can use the inverse of that to find the actual angle measure. Okay, so here we say that sine of x equals 0.5299. Okay, so now I'm going to use inverse sine, and when I use inverse sine, I flip these. So if I do sine inverse, and rather than do an x, I put 0.5299, that's going to equal x. Okay, now guys, you can just throw this into your calculator, and when you do it, you hit the second button, and then the sine button, and it should come out looking like sine to the -1, and you put in 0.5299, and you should get roughly 32, which means that x is roughly 32 degrees. Okay, so remember, you use this to find angle measures. All right, let's look at the next one. We have cosine of A equals 0.9848, so I'm going to use cosine inverse, and when I do that, these two flop. 0.9848 equals A. And then if I put this into my calculator, remember you have to put second cosine, you should get that A is roughly 10 degrees. Okay, go ahead and do tangent on your own, and then we'll go over it. All right, so when you do this, you'll put tangent to the -1, in other words, second tangent of 6.3138, and you should get roughly 81 degrees. All right, so we're using sine, cosine, and tangent inverse here. Okay, so go ahead and make that change using the inverse of sine, inverse of cosine, and inverse of tangent. And now we're going to find a missing angle. So everything we've done up to this point, we've known the angle measure, and we use that to find the missing side length. Well, now we're using the side lengths to find the missing angle. Okay, so we must have at least the value of at least one trig function. So you must have at least sine, cosine, or tangent. And so in order to have those, that's basically two side lengths. And then once again, we still need a right triangle. Okay, this only works for right triangles. So we need a right triangle, and we need one trig function. One trig function is two side lengths. Okay, and we use this when we're looking for an acute angle measure. All right, let's do an example. Okay, we can see that angle C is our reference angle because it has this line right here. So we're going to label this triangle according to that. So opposite of angle C is over here. Opposite of 90 is my hypotenuse. The one left over is my adjacent. So I have my hypotenuse and I have my adjacent. SOH-CAH-TOA. So you want to ask yourself which one pairs the H and the A together. Okay, well, A and H is paired with cosine. So I know that cosine of any angle is adjacent over hypotenuse. All right, so let's look at this. So I can say the cosine of angle C, because angle C is my reference angle, equals adjacent, which is 21, over my hypotenuse, which is 75. Okay, so I have an angle measure, and I know the cosine the cosine trigonometric function is 21 over 75. So this is when I want to use my inverse. So I could say cosine inverse. When I use the inverse, I flip this. 21 over 75 equals angle C. Okay? And then from here, guys, I just put this straight into my calculator. Remember, cosine is second cosine, and then you can just do 21 divided by 75 in parentheses. And you should get, when you do that, you should get that angle C is roughly 73.74 degrees. All right, let's look at this second example here. I always write SOH-CAH-TOA at the top. Okay, so here, as you can see, angle F is my reference angle because I have a little line there. So I'm going to label these sides accordingly. So opposite of 90 is always my hypotenuse. Opposite of angle F is over here, so this would be opposite. The one left over is adjacent. Okay, well here, guys, I know all of these. I know my opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. So let's just, I don't know, let's choose hypotenuse and opposite because we can. We could use any of these. So you want to ask yourself, which trig function has opposite and hypotenuse put together? Okay, sine does. So I could say sine of any angle is opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, so here I can say sine of angle F, so sine of F equals my opposite is 7 over my hypotenuse is 25. So I know the value of the sine of angle F, but I don't know the angle measure. So that's when I use inverse sine. When I use inverse sine, these two flip. So inverse sine of 7 over 25 equals F. And if I plug this into my calculator, I get that F is roughly 16.26 degrees. Okay, now I want to show you just that you could use anything else and you'd get the same thing. So if I used cosine, okay, so say I use my A is 24, my hypotenuse is 25. So say I'd say cosine of angle F is going to equal, well, cosine is always A over H, so 24 over 25. Okay, and then when I do the inverse, I'd flip these. 24 over 25 equals F. And if you plug this into your calculator, you would get the same exact thing as here. You'd say angle F is roughly 16.26 degrees. Okay, and you'd get the same thing if you did it for tangent as well. I just want you to know, you do get the same thing for all three things. And the only reason we could do all three sine, cosine, and tangent here is because we knew all three sides. All right, I want you to go ahead and do this example on your own, and then we will go over. All right, so obviously angle C is our reference angle because that's where we have the mark, which makes our 6 the opposite side and our 12 the adjacent side. So if we look over here at the trig functions, we want to know which of these have O and A together. Well, that's here at tangent. So it's a tangent of C is opposite over adjacent, so 6 over 12. After we get here, we know the value of tangent of C. We want to know what's the angle measure, so that's when we use inverse. Remember, when we use inverse, we flip these. So I'd say inverse tangent of 612 equals C, and if you put this here into your calculator, you would get roughly 26.57 degrees.